The world is your oyster, right? As they say, which is a pro and a con, I think, because that could lead to analysis paralysis because you can choose what you want. You can absolutely choose prepackaged. You can absolutely choose to build your own.
Considering an update to your JD Edwards scanning setup, curious how mobile data collection has evolved and what's worth investing next. In this episode, we explore how scanning has changed over the last 2 decades. We break down the current options from custom builds to package platforms, and we help you future proof your decision. Whether you're using legacy RF systems or evaluating cloud tools, you'll walk away asking smarter questions and avoiding cost pitfalls. Welcome back to Not Your Grandpa's JD Edwards, the podcast for JDE users ready to modernize with confidence. I'm your host, Nate Bushfield. Today, we're taking a practical look at mobile data collection from early RF guns to AI powered scanning tools. The landscape has transformed, but so has the expectations on the warehouse floor. Joining me is Steve Clampitt, who has spent over 25 years helping JD Edwards customers implement, evaluate, and evolve their scanning systems. Steve, welcome. How are you doing today?
Thank you for having me. I'm great. I'm a 10 out of 10. Having a good day. So looking forward to the chat.
Yeah, and obviously we have this great weekend of July 4th coming up, so I'm
Yes,
very excited about that as well. But
absolutely.
can you talk about your background a little bit? Given like you can
Yeah.
give college stuff, you can give anything really, but love to hear about
So as my cat walks by the camera, I forgot to shut the door. So yeah, I'm in industry, been in the JD Edwards industry since 2000. So that's about 25 years. Started with a company here in Kansas City called Data Systems International, DSI, which is where I cut my teeth on JD Edwards and development in general, and kind of went on from there. Worked a little bit of PeopleSoft, been in and outside of industry, a couple tenures with ArcSmart, and then most recently with the ERP suites here the last months. So the niche of my career being niche is that I've spent of those 25 years, about 12 of them within data collection, within mobile data scanning, barcode scanning, that kind of technology. So I've been around that area and been on numerous projects for our customers out there. So I definitely have a unique perspective from that regard.
Yeah, that's awesome. And obviously, KC people, big Chiefs fans. I know Cincinnati guy over here. So we'll try to keep this
Right.
formal.
I've,
We
I've
we don't have to
already.
go into that. I know we've talked about it before, but we can just leave it there. All
Can we turn off comments? Maybe turn off comments for this one.
right. I love it. But anyways, let's get to the point of why you're here. What did barcode scanning and mobile data collection look like in the early days
Yeah.
of JD Edwards?
So, when I was yeah, circa 2000, whatever, you're solving for a lot of manual processes, right? We're taking people off pen and paper, at this point, and you're giving them a solution that's, mostly around inventory counts, warehouse, shipping, procurement, things like that. Pretty simple stuff, but compared to what customers were at, obviously it's a game changer in terms of accuracy and data collection in general, right? There's a lot of focus on hardware, right? The correct kind of scanner and hardware in terms of your server and what your backend was and could it handle your transactional volume, things like that. So definitely was a different time period in that you're solving for something that's simple at the time, but prepping yourself for the future, right? You're getting ready to be able to enhance as JD Edwards. Obviously, the JD Edwards product was a lot different back then too, right? So integrating into that wasn't as easy as it is today. So
Yeah, exactly. And I've had the pleasure of meeting the guy who actually created the barcode scan, like the actual barcode
oh,
of
that's
it.
cool.
I will say I met the guy who made the oval one, and then
Mm-hmm.
his business partner stole the idea and made it a rectangle. And let me tell you, it scanned way
Yeah.
easier. Don't know why a guy was trying to make ovals work, but that's just my opinion. I
Yeah.
mean, foresight's yeah, it's very easy with
Yeah.
that way, but. it's very interesting. But what were the biggest limitations or even challenges companies
Hmm.
faced back then?
I think back then you definitely had to take a posture of size and scalability, right? You're dealing with hardware costs that were much different than they are today, and you really need to understand, what you were trying to solve for in your transactional volume, right? It wasn't easy to rescale, right? It wasn't easy. You're looking at a reimplementation if you kind of miss the mark. So a lot of time and a lot of effort was put into is the system that we're building going to be able to, going to handle it just from the barcode scanners, but also from the back end, from the database, from the JD Edwards system itself. Are you going to be able to integrate and have what's your transaction volume going to look like? So, that was definitely a challenge, and it still is today, but obviously the conversation is a lot different.
Yeah, of course. And obviously, in terms of data and in terms of being able to store that data these days, it
Hmm.
has come a long way.
Right.
Like you
Yep.
look at these terabyte drives that
Yep.
are, I have
Yep.
one right here, but it's literally like a little
Right.
box. Back
Right.
then, a terabyte was an entire room
Hmm.
just to
Yep.
store this data. So it is obviously it has evolved, it has changed, but especially now in terms of data storage, we're on the cutting edge of what back then we never thought was possible. I mean, those little
Yep.
tiny microchips too. But yeah,
Yeah,
go
and the
ahead, sir.
landscape was driven a lot by AS400s, DB2, and that's true of the beginning of JD Edwards itself, right? You didn't have as many blue stack, purple stack. You didn't have that stack, that database stack of Microsoft and Oracle back then. It was a lot of our customers were DB2, AS400, and so that obviously that's a different complexity for back then than it is today. But yeah, I would say managing your system, your scale and what you're going to be able to do with the tool that you bought, right?
Exactly. And that's what it all so all that it really counts for is what you can
Right.
do with it
Yeah.
at the end of
Exactly.
the day. At the end of the day, that's all it really matters. But from your experience, how did customer expectations and use cases begin to evolve?
I believe that as I think they evolved along with JD Edwards' evolution, right? As I think when I hit it was like B7332, which is a precursor to XE. And XE was kind of the big game changer, server, technology, whatnot. So as JD Edwards Oracle released new products, we go into 8.9, 8.10, 8.11. That's customer expectations increased because your ability to integrate within JD Edwards increased, right? Your ability to do things in JD Edwards became more than just, like I said, collecting inventory, right, managing the inventory. You're able to do integrations now. There's still friction there, but obviously as they build out the technology, it became easier, and more expectations were suited to like, okay, I now expect my solution to be tailored to what we do.
Yeah,
You know,
exactly.
so
Yeah, and
as the technology grew, so did customers' expectations, and that would have been reflected in barcode scanning as well, right?
yeah, exactly. And we've had a bunch of people on this podcast, but Frank Jordan actually came on and was talking
Mm-hmm.
about the actual development of it, where he has really been hands-on in the JD Edwards space for,
Yep.
I mean, longer than I've been alive,
Yes,
which is
legend.
crazy to say,
Yeah.
but yeah, legend in this space. And he
Yes.
was talking about how floppy disks were like the main thing that JD Edwards was carried on. And
Mm-hmm.
nowadays, it's a thing of the past.
Yep.
Like half of the
Yep.
people are on the cloud, some people are on their
Exactly.
own data center.
Mm-hmm.
It's very interesting how much we truly have grown. And yeah, you're right. The expectations have grown with that because of all the things that are changing in the world of technology, but specifically in JD Edwards. It would
Yep.
really make sense that yeah, like in terms of data collection, in terms of mobile barcode scanning, there has been such a revolutionary change over the last 25 years
Yep.
that, I mean, it begs the question of what's next.
Yep.
So, if a
Absolutely.
company is evaluating like options today, what kind of solutions are available? Are we talking like custom,
Mm-hmm.
packaged, or even hybrid?
The world is your oyster, right? As they say, which is a pro and a con. I think because that could lead to analysis paralysis because you can choose what you want. You can absolutely choose prepackaged. You can absolutely choose to build your own, you know, and both have obviously immense pros and cons, and a hybrid approach might be the best for the company. I think what I would say is if you're looking, know your team. What can your team handle? And from an executive perspective, what is my team going to be able to do with that product? Is you can go out there and buy a Ferrari, but if you don't know how to maintain a Ferrari, you don't know how to manage that, you know, you're going to be in over your head, right? So I think that but it's also a great time, right? It's a great time in technology, right? Because
Yeah,
you can find a solution that fits your needs, and whether you're you know, a large company or mid-size, you're going to be able to solve that problem with relative ease comparatively, you know, to the past, right?
very true. And yeah, obviously for a lot of these packaged deals, there's still a lot of personalization that goes
Yes.
into a lot of these because all companies are different.
Yep.
Everyone's set up a little bit differently. So there's still that customization side into it. But again, it's more commercialized. Maybe you're a company that has similar aspects to other companies that are out there. And so, yes,
Hmm.
it does feel packaged because people have already done that before.
Yeah.
But there's still that personalization
Yeah.
aspect to the package side.
I think
Um,
that's
obvious-
the hardest thing. Sorry, that's the hardest thing for customers to understand is, you know, the push might be to be vanilla, right? Oh, vanilla, you know, just take the scripts and workflows that are handed to you and use them. But in reality, that's not easy to do, and that's been my career. My career has been the guy that this. Okay, all right, what do we want to do customization wise to give you what you need to do your job, right? Because you're right, not every customer, um, they might look the same, but they're going to have different nomenclature. They're going to have, you know, they're going to have different things. And so when we get to, I think we might talk about cloud and AI later. I think that's one of the things, like when you're looking at that flexibility within JD Edwards, I'm not telling anybody something they don't already know, right? JD Edwards is
Mhm.
a flexible solution. And that is such a great thing for regardless of what you choose to do with the barcoding solution. There's flexibility in that.
Yeah, exactly. And with that flexibility, I mean, what are the true trade-offs of maybe a custom built or maybe just
Mhm.
vendor solutions that
Yeah.
I don't know, like leaders should really keep in mind?
Yeah, I think, like I said, you know, you gotta be careful with what you, if you want to build it in house, you need to understand and have the know how to do that, right? And have not just the JD Edwards experience from a functional perspective, but also a technical, right? You need the people on the technical side to be able to implement that well. So I think that's a challenge, but I think there are certain companies that it's a slam dunk, right? They can absolutely do that. They have the technology, they have the know-how, and they're going to do that, and it's going to be a great solution for them. But I think maybe for the majority of JD Edwards customers, a prepackaged solution might look better. You're still going to have your ability to be flexible and make changes to the system, but you know, you're going to get your standard workflows and scripts out of the gate that you're going to be able to do most of your business, and then from there, you know, to integrate, as we all want to do, to integrate using, you know, the tool set necessary, you know, that's available to us today. So I think there is no one size fits all, obviously, right?
Yeah.
You know, so no matter what you choose, you're probably going to have a gap, and you're going to have to solve for that gap. But that's, again, I'll go back to JD Edwards flexibility. You know, that's what you can do. It's a flexible solution, and so those gaps are pretty easily filled, you know, with the right people in the room, and smart people, you know, giving you advice, or make, you know, doing the research that you need to do to find those solutions.
Exactly. And everyone wants to go with vanilla these days. It seems like it's
Mm-hmm.
such a word that we use in this space. And yes, like when you're looking at specifically a scannability or a mobile scanning idea or product, a lot of people don't understand that the vanilla side of it still has personalization to it. It still has that custom type of feel to it, even though it's not technically customized.
Right.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and it all depends on what your company truly is about and what you
Mm-hmm.
need it for. And especially with orchestrations, when you mix that into it, there's a lot that you can really uncover. So when you are starting out, maybe you do start out with a package solution that's a little bit more of a everybody's kind of using it. You have those certain workflows. But as maybe you use it for a few months or something, maybe you're like, oh wait, this could be easier if this thing happens, or maybe if we implement this little application here, like it could build itself into a customized solution, even when
Mhm.
in the beginning you were just trying to go vanilla. And yes, the
Right.
vanilla, oh gosh,
Right.
I could
Yes.
talk about going vanilla all day.
Right.
But anyways,
It's always the
uh,
goal, but it's hard to achieve, and I know
mhm.
that from firsthand experience. Because I've been the guy that does like, okay, we've cried uncle. We need to customize this process to achieve, some integration or some customization or even labeling and things. There's a lot to consider, and I think that's what I would say is that regardless of the direction that you go, there's a significant investment and effort that you're going to have to put in, and it's not easy, but to put into the thought process of what do we want out of our barcoding solution, right? What's our goal? And that's not, it's easy to underestimate or underestimate. I think either way, I think it's easy to kind of take that for granted. And you can't, I don't believe you can.
Exactly. And it's about what you want to get out of it. You're right, completely goal oriented. And if you're not thinking about the goals,
Hmm.
what are you doing?
Right.
It's as
Amen.
simple as that. What are you
Yep.
doing?
Yep. Amen.
But how do today's tools better like integrate
Hmm.
or yeah, integrate with JD
Yeah.
Edwards more than legacy systems?
Yeah, absolutely. So we live in good times, right? We're living in good times. We have the tool, J.G. Edwards tool itself, with their continuous improvement that Oracle's brought to us with 9.2, and then the advent of orchestration, right? Obviously, um, I don't need to parrot the benefits of it, but um, most companies would benefit from the ability to integrate. There probably isn't. I can't think of a integration that orchestrations can't handle. Right? I'm sure there's one, but most things that customers could dream up, they're going to be able to use the power and flexibility of Orchestrator to be able to integrate. And I think that before, as I've been in the industry, integrations were a lot of friction. Right? There was a lot of difficulty. You had to whether it was, an API based or whatever it was, there was a lot of technology overhead and software development overhead that took place to integrate within the system. And today, that's been shrunk so much with orchestrations. And with the idea of low code, no code, right, and the enhancements of the UI to JD Edwards, or the front end of our tool, they continue to improve the product, which then improves you know the barcodes, right? If you improve the product, that improvements go all the way down to the nuts and bolts of a solution. So yes, there is so much. It is so much easier to integrate within and out of JD Edwards than it ever has been before. That friction has gone away, and you have tools like Oracle orchestrations that can help you with that, along the entire stack, right, wherever you're at. So.
Exactly. And there's so much that really goes into that. But at the end of the day, like your solution is going to be what you want it to be. There is so much customization. There's so much that you can really
Right.
bring into it when it comes from, and yeah, like legacy systems, you really couldn't do that
Nope.
because it was, this is what it is. This is what we built.
Right.
Can't really do much. And
Yeah.
you harped on this earlier. Sadie Edwards is such a flexible system.
Yes.
There is so much that you can truly get out of it if you take the time to try to do it. And
Hmm.
that's at the end of the day, you have to do a little bit more work in the beginning for sure.
Yes.
But the payoff of that by looking a little bit deeper, by going into something that maybe your company's like, oh, I don't know if there's anything there. Maybe there is something there that'll
Hmm.
save valuable, precious time that you can be using on anything
And
else that'll
yeah,
enhance your company.
and I will say that for numerous years, one of the best ways that we integrated was through Z file prop, right, which is basically flat files in and out of JD Edwards, right, and that still exists today, but it goes to show that JD Edwards has always been flexible. They've
Mhm.
always given us a way to integrate into the system, and so with the improved technologies and with orchestrations, it only just continues to show that the system's always been looking to integrate in and out of it for JD Edwards customers, and that's a great thing, right? It's a good problem to have, to be able to have more than one option to integrate within JD Edwards.
Exactly. And as it's upgrading everything, what are the trends that are shaping the future of scanning? Or is it cloud, AI, user
Yeah,
experience?
I think I think the flexibility of JD Edwards is still greater than the trade-offs of cloud. And that's today, right? As of 2025. I can't say what the future will look like, and I think the gap will decrease, right, as cloud becomes more mature. But I think a lot of cloud solutions, you're limited to what you can do. In a JD Edwards customer, let's say a legacy JD Edwards customer that's been on JD Edwards and barcode scanning for years, that's not gonna be very palatable for them, to look at a cloud solution. Obviously, net new, that's a different conversation. But I think when it comes to cloud, for the majority or maybe a lot of JD Edwards customers, it's not ready yet. It's not baked yet, but it will be, and we're going to need to be there for it, obviously. And I would say I can't answer to AI. I don't think we've scratched the surface of how AI. I mean, I know it will impact us. Clearly, it will. I just don't know how AI will trickle down into data collection and what barcode scanning is. I can kind of imagine, but today I don't think I know what that's going to look like.
Yeah, and maybe it's just as simple as maybe they're catching errors on maybe a
Hmm.
barcode is printed
Right.
wrong, or maybe there's an issue with where the data is really going and you need to clean that up. Maybe AI will
Yeah.
supplement that side of it. Maybe there's just a, if you have, I don't know, maybe when you're scanning and your count is off, maybe it'll
Hmm.
catch that and it'll send you a flag for it. But there's also orchestrations that are built out for
Yeah.
that now,
Absolutely. Yes.
which, yeah, in the future, maybe we don't actually have to build out those orchestrations. We can just utilize an AI to build
Hmm.
that out for us. And
Yeah.
yeah, it's all speculation at this point of what
Yeah.
that will truly look like. And I'm sure people will go above and beyond what my mind can comprehend right
Absolutely.
now. But
Right. But I think it's the idea that the lifting used to be heavy, and now the lifting gets a lot easier
mhm,
as we dig into the technologies and as they become more mature, and as smart people come into the industry and find those solutions and see, okay, hey, this would be great. The head lifting becomes easier, and yeah, it's the to keep your system clean and running smoothly. Absolutely, absolutely.
exactly. And talking about the future, how can JD Edwards teams like future proof their data
Mhm.
collection?
I think this is a good question. I like this question because we ask this questions of JD, of JD Edwards customers when it comes to their their system, right? We
Yeah.
talk about health checks, right? We talk about, how is JD Edwards working for you? I think that should trickle down into your barcoding solution, right? I think
Yeah.
that how is your system running? How is are your transactions flowing the system correctly? How accurate is your data? And when was the last time you checked the accuracy of your data? Are you getting what you expect out of your transactions? And then I would also say, and this is something that's going to come specifically from me because of my industry experience, but are your scripts and workflows optimized for a code current environment, for a code current E1 environment? I
Exactly.
think that's a big one to dig into and understand. Is your system working the way that you expect it to when you're doing XYZ transaction?
Exactly. And if you were to go into an upgrade, would those flows be affected because they're
Hmm.
not code current? And with
Absolutely.
all of the new applications that are being rolled out on the newest releases, there is so much opportunity for some of these companies that maybe they're dragging their feet on a upgrade, or
Mhm.
maybe
Yep.
they're not seeing the actual payoff for it. But if you're staying code current, eventually there will be an upgrade. There will be something that you're like, oh, wow, we have to jump
Yep.
on that. And instead of you
Absolutely.
having to take a year to become code current in everything, and
Hmm.
by then that year's gone and they have a new
Yeah.
release that you have to become code current
Right.
for,
Right.
that's just extra, more
Right.
work. And you don't need that. So if you
It's
stay code current,
Yeah, it's always an issue, right? It's always been an issue to stay concurrent, but I think that what is it? Regret weighs tons, and I forget the second part of it. Regret weighs tons, and consistency weighs ounces. Right.
Hmm.
And that's easy for me to say because obviously big solutions are hard to maintain. And we know, I know how gigantic, the footprint of JD Edwards can be. But at the end of the day, you do want your system to be running in the best shape that it can. And by doing those cell checks and staying concurrent throughout the entire, framework of your system and your barcoding solution, right? I think that's what you want to do to get the most out of it, to get the most efficiency out of it, and get the most value out of it.
Yeah, exactly. And that actually rolls in perfectly to the next question of what advice would you give someone leading a
Mm-hmm.
scanning modernization project in 2025?
Do your research, and I know that sounds simple, but I mean the landscape has changed over the last few years, I would say, and what we think we know of barcode solutions isn't the same. I think you mentioned it. I think it's a lot easier to roll out your own custom built solution maybe than it was before. But it's just as easy to buy a prepackaged one. It's also easy to do a hybrid. But I think do your research, know the landscape of what you're getting yourself into. And I think I've said this already before, but know what your team is capable of. Know what your players, know the industry knowledge of your team. How familiar they are with your ERP, right? How well do they know JD Edwards? How well do they know if you have a barcoding solution, how well do they know it? I think a lot of times it's easy for that to get stale and for that to kind of get left in the weeds, if you will, and kind of get overgrown and not maintained. So how well do you know what you're solving for? And I think I would say also that you need to understand the architecture each solution brings you, right? How does the piece of software that you're going to bring into your company integrate with JD Edwards ecosystem? And does it do that seamlessly, or are there things that maybe leave you wanting? So I think that's something you want to dig into is what is that technology going to bring you, and how are you going to succeed with it? And then I would say good luck. It's not easy, but I think that there are so many partners out there that are capable of helping, that are able to help you navigate those difficult choices and knowing what you want and doing, like we said earlier, like taking the time to figure out what you desire is going to pay dividends when you get down to it, when you make that decision. So
Yeah, exactly. And it all comes down to prep. If you are prepared for the next step, nothing will come out of left field and make your company have to wait or and waste more money on something that you should have had, you know? And
yep,
again, like
absolutely.
wait, like there's so much that goes into an upgrade and getting onto these new applications and everything like that, that if you are prepared for
Mhm.
anything, when you are, and yes, you're right, like us saying that is one thing, doing it is
Right.
a whole other thing.
Yes. Yeah, I think don't be afraid to remove your expectation, remove what you expect, and just kind of go into it with the open mind and understand that um, the solution is out there, whether that is hybrid, whether that's one or the other. I think you should be able to find in today's technology in what JD Edwards can offer you. You should be able to find a solution that absolutely serves the needs of your organization, 100%.
Exactly. But if you're exploring mobile data collection options for JD Edwards, start with the right questions about your users, your architecture, and your long-term goals. If you want a second opinion, ERP Suites has helped hundreds of companies modernize with clarity. Head to erpsuites.com and let's start this conversation. But that's it for this episode of Not Your Grandpa's JD Edwards. Huge shout out to you, Steve, for sharing your insight and for helping us think a little smarter about scanning. If you learned something today, subscribe, leave a quick rating, or share this with your JD Edwards peers. We've got more episodes coming soon, but until next time, keep innovating and stay future ready. Thank you.